Due to the rise of AIs, nowadays it's very hard to tell what's real and what isn't. So if you're a real person, hit the like button and leave a comment down below saying, "I'm not a robot." That way, I'll know you're not under Elon Musk's control. Now then, let's go straight to the video. The story begins with Alma Tandoji, who appears while analyzing a map and tracking the course of a river. Suddenly, he notices a massive explosion in the sky, which is now covered by a thick cloud of smoke. It looks like a ship has been destroyed, and inside it emerges a bizarre creature with a head resembling that of a jellyfish. As he looks in that direction, Alma is struck in a mysterious way. Because of the presence of that entity, he immediately starts writhing on the ground in pain while experiencing disorienting visions. The next day, Ruri shows up at the site of the explosion to investigate. She's not alone, accompanied by her butler, Makoto, and also by a talking artifact named Onigawara, which seems to be some kind of mascot. They find out that there were 267 people aboard the ship, but for some strange reason, they all vanished without leaving a single trace. Inside the vessel, there was a statue known as the Eye of Uriali, which represented Perseus. Ruri realizes the situation has spiraled out of control and decides to look for Alma. Meanwhile, Alma heads to school on his scooter, and once he arrives, his classmates avert their eyes and try to avoid him at all costs. Some even step away and start whispering, and at one point, Fujimura bumps into him after being shoved by his group of bullies. Alma ignores it all and walks straight into the classroom, where he's greeted by Wakana. However, her friends quickly warn her not to speak with Alma, since he's the constant subject of rumors throughout the school. Later, outside the building, Alma sees some bullies intimidating Fujimura, demanding a penalty for not obeying their earlier orders. But upon seeing this scene, Alma chooses not to get involved. Afterward, he gets on his scooter and stops by a river. There, he wades into the water, searching for some stones. Wakana, who happens to be passing by, watches curiously to see what he's doing. The next day, she finds him on the school's rooftop. Her friends come along, but keep their distance. She tries to invite Alma to join her club, but he immediately turns her down. She mentions that she always sees him digging around the river in search of rocks, and he replies that it's none of her business. Even so, Wakana insists, and says they'll be going to the museum later to see an exhibit featuring a giant gemstone. She tries to cheer him up so he'll come along, but Alma once again refuses. Her friends, realizing the mood isn't great, quickly back away and leave him alone. As she walks off, Wakana makes it clear that she'll be waiting for him at 5 p.m. At the bus stop in front of Inode Park, her friends scold her for trying to invite Alma to the club, saying that he's already hurt a lot of people, and no one knows what he might do when he loses control. But Wakana doesn't believe in these rumors, and she points out that Alma is always calmly searching for stones by the river, which she sees as a sign that he's actually quiet and introspective. That night, Alma is on his way home, unaware that several access routes are being blocked by members of the Foundation. Ruri follows Wakana's two friends, Kagami and Onigawara, in search of the hero. They also have two snipers positioned and ready, just waiting for the order to act. Alma is at home when he hears someone knocking at the door. When he opens it, he finds Ruri standing there. Kagami introduces himself as the supreme leader of the Iba Foundation. Ruri asks for Alma's help, explaining that a passenger ship recently exploded near the Miura Peninsula. The one responsible for that disaster was a monster they call the Black Stone. She warns him that this monster will strike again, and the next attack will be even more catastrophic. That's why they desperately need his power. He refuses, saying he doesn't want to get involved. But Ruri reveals she's talking about the power he unleashed 3 years ago, and Kagami claims they know everything about him. To prove they're serious, Kagami lists where Alma goes to school, his past coursework, his grades, and the incident from 3 years back, when Alma, at just 14 years old, lost control and injured 18 students. 8 of them took 8 months to fully recover. Yes, a lot of 8s going on here. Because of that, Alma was suspended from school for 8 months. Correction, it was only 6 months. Nowadays, he's studying while under probation. He's also alone, since his father disappeared and his mother passed away 10 years ago, leaving him in the care of the Luce family while she was still unmarried. Alma becomes furious and makes it clear he no longer cares about any of this, and that he just wants to live a quiet, peaceful life. Overcome with anger, he tries to shove Ruri, but Kagami immediately restrains him, using a technique and signals for the snipers to stay alert. At that moment, Alma awakens a glowing mark on his forehead and begins to release his power. The Black Stone, the same one that attacked the ship, immediately senses his presence. Onigawara senses it as well. He informs Kagami that Alma's energy is spiraling completely out of control, and faced with this, Kagami decides to retreat and pulls Ruri away from the scene, leaving Alma behind on his own, hoping that he'll manage to calm down. Soon after that, the Black Stone strikes again, this time targeting a different city. specifically a street close to where Wakana was waiting for him. Her friends insist that she should leave, since it seems Alma isn't going to show up. They decide to head to the museum and leave her there by herself. Even so, Wakana remains, still hoping he might come after all. Kagami is informed about the new attack and immediately issues a red alert, ordering the team to prepare transportation and all necessary combat gear. Meanwhile, Alma feels something strange in his chest and realizes the Black Stone is attacking exactly the area where Wakana said she'd be waiting. Without wasting a second, he jumps onto his scooter and rides straight toward the indicated location. Kagami receives additional intel about the artifact the Black Stone is after. It's the Eye of Satano, currently on display at the Morizo Art Museum. At the same time, Wakana's friends have already arrived at the museum. There, Allied personnel begin evacuating civilians from the building due to the threat level. Kagami finally arrives at the site where the combat system is based. He enters the equipment with the goal of stopping the Black Stones. These entities have now been identified as Medusa type. Shortly afterward, Kagami comes face to face with the Medusa, and the two immediately engage in a fierce battle. During the fight, Medusa throws him against a hill, and although Kagami manages to rip off one of her arms, he ends up losing the fight. His combat system suffers considerable damage, but he escapes without critical injuries. He then sends an automatic message to notify that Medusa has escaped. Sensing the presence of the gem that Ruri carries, Medusa starts heading straight toward her. Kagami partially restores his damaged combat system and begins pursuit, hoping to stop Medusa from reaching Ruri. Elsewhere, Wakana, who has already waited far too long, grows irritated by the delay and finally decides to leave. From a distance, we see Alma arriving with a faint smile on his face, but suddenly an explosion erupts behind Wakana, and Medusa is the one responsible for it. Since Ruri was also passing through that area, Alma rushes toward Wakana to make sure she's okay. When he finds her injured, he's overwhelmed with rage and instantly realizes that Medusa is behind it all. Medusa then attacks the limousine that's transporting Ruri and tears it open, trying to devour her. But Alma arrives just in time and hurls Medusa away. And at that exact moment, he transforms into a dark stone, taking on a new form, yet now without any control over his own actions. In this new state, he charges straight at Medusa and brutally beats her until there's almost nothing left but shattered pieces. Kagami shows up and tries to shoot Alma, but Ruri stops him. She slowly approaches, trying to calm Alma down, but he turns his attention to her, ready to strike. However, Ruri is surrounded by a blue aura, the energy coming from the gemstone she carries. She cries out to him, pleading for him to return to normal. And at last, Alma regains his senses, realizing what he almost did. Filled with remorse, he wishes to never again unleash such an uncontrollable power. Ruri then hands him her gemstone, which merges with his body, granting Alma access to his true power, but this time in a more balanced and restrained form. These gemstones are used to amplify the power of the Black Stones, and in his case, the gem allows him to retain control and transform without becoming a complete monster. Meanwhile, Medusa's severed head still lingers nearby, and it ends up swallowing the gemstone that had been on display at the museum. This fusion causes Medusa to evolve into an even larger and more powerful creature. She tries to attack Alma once more, but this time, she's defeated with ease. Shortly after that, Alma throws her body into a secluded area in order to destroy her core, the place where she stores her stones. And with a single powerful blow, Alma strikes her core and defeats Medusa once and for all. Following all of this, Ruri's agency returns to normal operations, and she begins managing the aftermath. Wakana is shown being treated in an ambulance, and fortunately, she didn't suffer any serious injuries. But from the remains of Medusa, a strange worm-like entity emerges, apparently a residual form of her essence. This worm is absorbed by another black stone, which immediately takes off into the distance. The next day, Alma attempts to return to school, and once again the bullies show up trying to provoke him. They shove Fujimura and begin mocking him. But this time, Alma stands up for himself and doesn't back down. He confronts them head-on to protect his classmate, and later on, Alma visits Wakana's club and makes it clear that he wants to join them. He even steps into the group, not even bothering to apologize for what happened before. To his surprise, Ruri and Kagami have also joined the club, and both of them enrolled in the school to keep an eye on him. Kagami has become the president of the student union, while Ruri now leads the student council. And in order to prevent any unnecessary stress for Alma, they went as far as purchasing the entire school. As a result, the entire institution has been completely renovated. The classrooms are now ultra-modern, and the cafeteria food resembles that of a luxury restaurant. Yet everything remains entirely affordable and accessible. Ruri watches the students enjoying themselves and decides to return to her duties. She calls Alma to meet her at her office. He shows up but doesn't find anyone there. Out of curiosity, he starts looking around the room and comes across a photograph of Ruri's family. Onigawara appears and warns him not to smoke indoors. Alma is puzzled by this comment. Right after that, Ruri enters the room and notices that he's curious about who Onigawara really is. She reveals that he is, in fact, a black stone. Getting straight to the point, Kagami and Ruri sit down with Alma to explain the nature of his powers, known as the Sacred Seven. They want to understand why he possesses such abilities, and Kagami begins his explanation. 17 years ago, meteors fell across different parts of the world. When they were analyzed, scientists discovered 7 kinds of alien crystals inside them. These crystals were named the Sacred Seven. They possess the power to alter human DNA, resulting in strange and unpredictable mutations. The current theory is that Alma's mother came into contact with one of these crystals, which would explain the powers he now possesses. The way Sacred Seven works depends on who touches the crystal. Those who manifest the power are called black stones, and those who are able to control this force are referred to as clear stones. They explain all of this to Alma because they know that new black stones will eventually emerge in the future, and they need his help to face them. Alma says he doesn't want to get involved and believes that such tasks should be left to the military or armed forces. Ruri promises to provide whatever it takes if he agrees to help, but Alma walks away, saying he'll think about the proposal. Before leaving, he asks about the gem she had shown him earlier. Kagami explains that Ruri used the gem to save his life, and without saying anything else, Alma leaves. Kagami then tells Ruri that it would be best to bring him in today, but Ruri doesn't want Alma to join them out of pity, so she decides to wait. The next day, Alma and the rest of the group are at the river collecting stones, since that's the club's main activity. But soon it becomes clear that Alma isn't there just for fun. Unlike the others, he isn't collecting any random stones. He's actually been searching for a very specific stone that was thrown into the river by some people who messed with him 3 years ago. He has never stopped looking for that stone ever since, but no matter how much time has passed, he still hasn't been able to recover it. It was also at that very spot where he first met Wakana, who happens to be a passionate stone collector. That same day, a powerful windstorm begins sweeping across Japan. Kagami starts investigating and discovers that the storm is being caused by a black stone. He alerts Ruri that this particular black stone is hovering over the sea and is the source of the problem. On top of that, it was created inside an American ship that mysteriously vanished some time ago. These black stones have taken the form of dragon-like parts and are equipped with highly dangerous weapons. One of them, in fact, contains a nuclear energy payload. If this stone touches the ground, it will cause an enormous explosion. Kagami goes after Alma to try and convince him to help. To do that, he decides to show Alma the real reason why Ruri is so committed to fighting the black stones. He takes Alma to Ruri's mansion and reveals her sister, Aoi, who is in a frozen state. Kagami explains that she ended up that way after being photographed the same day the black stone claimed the lives of Ruri's parents. To honor their memory, Ruri created a foundation dedicated to eliminating the black stones, and possibly finding a way to save her sister. Ruri finds out that Kagami revealed everything to Alma, and slaps him, as she doesn't want Alma to fight purely out of sympathy. Even so, Kagami's plan works, because Alma now decides to fight alongside them. Without wasting time, they board a plane in pursuit of the black stone, but Alma immediately starts regretting it when he finds out he'll have to skydive. Kagami tries to cheer him up, but the delay gives the black stone time to initiate its attack. Alma and Onigawara end up being ejected from the plane. Onigawara is swallowed by the black stone, while Alma is saved by Ruri, who jumps after them and hands him a new gem. This allows Alma to activate his powers, unleashing an ability that forms a type of flying skateboard. Onigawara, still inside the black stone, manages to locate its weak point. He signals Alma, who dodges incoming attacks, and with one precise shot, destroys the black stone completely. The stone sinks into the sea, and after that everyone returns to the mansion, except Onigawara, who is left behind in the ocean. Sometime later we see Ruri obtaining more of those gems to keep Alma stable. This time the gems were being sold abroad at an auction, and she participates and places the highest bid. On the way back, we realize that Onigawara is already traveling with them alongside Ruri. He warns her to be careful with the expenses, otherwise she'll end up burning through all the money. Ruri responds that she doesn't mind spending, as long as she succeeds in eliminating the black stones. Onigawara reminds her that he is also one of those black stones, but Ruri says he's too weak to cause any trouble, and that she trusts him. Later that night, Alma is at the river as usual, searching for the stone he lost years earlier. Then he senses a strange aura, one he had felt before, and that aura comes from a black stone that appears suddenly and attacks Makoto. Makoto is there with a man named Kenmi, and Kagami activates his combat system to confront the black stone. He is unable to stand a chance against it, and the stone has the power to transform things around it, eventually fusing Kagami with the road's asphalt. Then it grabs a light panel and hurls it with full force at Kenmi. But Kenmi uses one of the gems to transform, just like Alma. He gains armor around his body and superhuman abilities. Guided by the aura he sensed, Alma enters the fight and becomes involved. Suddenly his powers begin running wild, since he is without the gems that Ruri usually gives him. The Black Stone realizes he is there and shows strong interest, while Kenmi continues attacking, landing several blows, but is ultimately overpowered. Afterwards, he decides to retreat when he notices reinforcements arriving. Alma manages to control himself, but soon after he passes out. He is then taken to Ruri's mansion, where she calls a doctor to examine him. A little later, Ruri meets with Kenmi, who wants help capturing two people. First, Kijima, and second, Feizu Lao. Kijima is precisely the Black Stone they just faced. Kijima and Lao had managed to escape from Kenmi's lab since he had taken away their freedom. According to Kenmi, he was only administering a serum that would prevent the two from transforming. He also claims that both had been using the power of the Sacred Seven to commit crimes. Ruri agrees to help with this mission, and meanwhile, Kijima arrives at his hideout, where Lao administers the serum they obtained from Kenmi. This returns Kijima to normal, and Lao says she wants to accompany him next time he sets out. They are running low on serum and need more, but Kijima, however, does not want to remain involved, and also reveals that he wants to take down Kenmi, even though it's complicated for him. He thinks of Alma and mentions to Lao someone who has the same Sacred Seven class, and we then learn that this same class is at the same level as his. The next day, Alma is near the river, reflecting on what Ruri told him, that there are other Sacred Sevens like him, overseen by an organization. Kenmi warns that Kijima will appear that night to attempt to steal the serum that keeps users conscious. He also confesses that he was responsible for unleashing both Medusa and the dragon-shaped Black Stone. Later, everyone assumes alert positions, preparing for Kijima's arrival, with the goal of capturing him alive. Onigawara senses his approach and alerts the team. Kagami, operating a combat system, tries to block his advance, but Kijima simply ignores it and leaves some worms in his wake. Kijima heads straight for where the serum is stored, ready to grab it. What he didn't expect is that the whole scenario was set up as an ambush to capture him. Even so, Kijima manages to escape, but on his way out, he encounters another Sacred Seven, who acts as Kenmi's bodyguard. Kijima simply walks past her as if she's nothing, summons his worms, and heads straight to Kenmi's office. Alma, Ruri, and Onigawara are also there. Kijima attempts to attack Kenmi, but Alma intervenes, and the two end up in a confrontation and fall together. Kijima uses his ability to pin Alma to the ground, but Alma manages to break free, and at that moment, Kijima tries to make Alma understand that he is only fighting for his own freedom. Then Arakune, the Sacred Seven from before, returns once more to try to stop Kijima, but again she is ignored, and he manages to exit the scene, saying he hopes to meet the hero again. The next day, a school festival takes place, and Alma ends up dozing off and has to run so he won't be late. Meanwhile, at school, Ruri, now acting as the principal, is excited with the preparations for the festival. Wakana's friends head to her classroom to take some pictures and interview her about the event. Onigawara senses that there's danger in the air and warns everyone. Makoto pulls him aside in a rush and scolds him for revealing such information in front of everyone. Even so, Onigawara insists that he felt a dark stone nearby. Ruri asks what's going on, and Makoto admits that yes, there is a dark stone in the area, but to avoid making her anxious and ruining the event, he lies and says that Onigawara already took care of it. However, the dark stone is actually a larva sent into the school by Kijima. On the other side, Wakana is preparing a room for the stone exhibition that will take place the next day. Alma shows up to help her with the projector, and a few minutes later, Ruri arrives to check how the decorations are coming along. At that moment, Alma senses the presence of the dark stone and leaves to investigate. Makoto also begins tracking it. As the stone moves, everything it touches turns to stone. Alma finds Makoto, who takes him to the control room to explain the situation, trying to keep everything secret to prevent Ruri from finding out and canceling the festival. He assigns Alma to handle the situation, since according to Onigawara, the stone is rather weak. Makoto leaves, and Alma remains with Onigawara, thinking that even if the stone seems weak now, it could become a threat later. Onigawara disagrees and asks Alma to pretend everything's fine in front of Ruri. He even calls her and sets up a meeting on the school rooftop. She blushes and accepts immediately, and meanwhile, Makoto alerts the other agents about the dark stone inside the school. They switch to emergency mode and begin analyzing the readings from the area. They realize that the dark stone doesn't emit heat, so Makoto asks them to activate the combat system, but the operators say they can't do that with students nearby. Makoto, however, reassures them, saying he already has a plan for situations like this. Meanwhile, Alma is on the rooftop with Ruri, and the two are about to say something important to each other. Alma takes the initiative, trying to find the right way to ask Ruri for one of her gems. He wants to transform without losing control, just in case something goes wrong at school. Trying to stall, he decides to use a cheesy line that Onigawara had suggested earlier, but in the end, Alma can't even finish the sentence. He finds it way too corny and gives up on the idea. Even without understanding the situation, Ruri decides to help and gives him a spare gem. As soon as Alma transforms, Wakana walks into the office. The two try to make up an excuse, but Wakana assumes he's just dressed like that for some kind of cosplay. She comments that the idea would be perfect for promoting the exhibit. She then sticks a flyer on him and sends him off to advertise. But in truth, Alma heads out to hunt the Dark Stone. Kagami gets involved too, activating his combat mode and walking through the school as if it were normal. Meanwhile, Wakana's friends spot Makoto and chase after him, wanting to take photos, but he stops them, saying it's something really important. The Dark Stone ends up splitting into two parts. Alma goes after one, and Makoto chases the other. Wakana's friends decide to follow Makoto to find out what he's hiding, and Alma ends up losing sight of the stones. A group of bullies is painting a monument, and when they see Alma, they start mocking him, thinking he's just wearing a costume. They throw paint at him, and at that moment, the monument starts to collapse due to the Dark Stone's influence. Alma holds it up to keep students from getting hurt. Two of them manage to climb down from the statue that's still standing, but Alma doesn't want to reveal his powers to everyone. The last student slips, so he decides to drop the monument to save the person. The monument crashes down on him, but Makoto arrives just in time and saves Alma. He had already destroyed the Dark Stone and ran back to help. Both of them end up being seen as heroes by the students, and the people who were mocking Alma regret their actions. After that, Alma resumes the hunt for the Dark Stone and finds a warning that it has been transformed. He tries to stop what's about to happen, but his transformation fails. Makoto shows up and grabs the Dark Stone, trying to eliminate it, but then realizes that the stone is actually Alma. The stone begins pulsing and looks like it's about to explode, so Makoto throws it high into the sky. It had fused with fireworks, and when it explodes, it creates a real spectacle in the sky for the students. Makoto leaves the scene like a true hero, and shortly afterward, two girls show up dressed as directors, pretending the whole thing was part of a movie shoot. That way, they manage to convince everyone that it was all just acting. Even with all that theater, Ruri realizes that the two were actually doing everything for real. They apologize to her and explain that they didn't want the festival to be canceled and were really happy to see her so excited about it. Ruri forgives them, but makes it clear she doesn't want them getting involved with the Dark Stones again without letting her know. The next day, the festival takes place, and the atmosphere is great. Because of that, lots of visitors show up, and the Geology Club's exhibition is a total success. The Geology Club ends up placing second among all the cultural clubs. That night, Alma and his friends celebrate the success. Ruri is drinking the beverage she used to drink a while ago, saying it tastes really good. But Wakana, who knows the product from her family's pharmacy, reveals that it's actually a tonic that boosts stamina and libido. Ruri gets super embarrassed and drops her drink. Alma and Makoto get worried seeing her so red and try to figure out what just happened. A few days later, Ruri organizes a camping trip and invites Alma, Wakana, and the rest of the group too. As soon as they arrive, the first stop is a temple where several stone-related festivals are held. From a distance, Wakana spots a mountain shaped like a pyramid. She mentions that it was built by ancient peoples in honor of the god Hoki, but her classmates think it's just made-up stuff and keep walking. Alma also looks at the mountain and says it really does look like a pyramid, but suddenly he feels a strange presence and freezes for a moment. Ruri asks what's wrong, but he brushes it off and continues the tour. Still, Makoto notices that Alma definitely saw something weird. Later on, while the group enjoys the beach, Wakana heads off to search for stones for her collection. She wanders off so far that she ends up inside a cave. Makoto is with Alma preparing the meal, but soon realizes Alma is acting really strange, as if he sensed something. He starts to suspect something's off, and soon after, we see Alma walking with Onigawara, asking if he also sensed something strange in that area. He confirms that he did, saying it's very close. And right then, Makoto shows up upset, complaining that Alma left him alone. That's when Alma reveals he felt the presence of a dark stone nearby and shows the trail it's been leaving behind. At that moment, Makoto also starts feeling that something's wrong. Onigawara explains that there are many ancient dark stones scattered across the world. They're unknown to humans, and one of them is incredibly close. Even so, he doesn't know exactly what kind of creature might be linked to it. That's when Wakana appears in front of the group, asking them to come see something she just found. Everyone heads to the spot, which is a cave Wakana had seen a bit earlier. She says the cave leads to the giant pyramid that was mentioned in the story. Alma confirms to Makoto that the dark stone is definitely inside that place. Makoto gets excited about the idea of exploring, but is also the one who stops everyone from entering. He says the group isn't ready yet, and that it could all be extremely dangerous. So he proposes they only go in after everyone's had something to eat. Later, we see that Kagami's combat system has already been activated, which indicates Ruri has been informed of the situation. Makoto decides to venture into the cave alone to investigate. He says that if he senses any danger, he'll come right back to avoid causing any more trouble. At the command center, the Dunks are analyzing the mountain's formation. Makoto enters the cave together with Onigawara, who wants to let him know the stone is really close. Onigawara states that the dark stone is located deep inside the cave. As Makoto moves forward, he notices everything seems to have been built, rather than naturally formed. The stones are arranged in a very strange way, and the corridors have an obviously artificial look. This makes him suspect the mountain might actually be a pyramid. Onigawara also believes it would have been better to have gone in with Alma from the beginning. That clearly would have been the right call. Even so, he stayed outside to protect the girls in case anything went wrong. Makoto and Onigawara run into an enemy. They begin to fight, but one still remains. Makoto suspects the dark stone itself is what's creating all these creatures. Onigawara feels the presence of the stone and notices that it's much weaker now. Makoto then keeps moving forward to try and find it, and at that moment, a tremor begins shaking both the cave and the surrounding area. Ruri runs inside to find out what's going on, and Alma follows right after her. Both of them end up falling into a huge hole that connects to the inside of the cave. Onigawara explains to Makoto that the dark stone has awakened, and that now the real battle begins. At the operations center, the maids inform Makoto that Ruri fell along with Alma. Right after that, they lost contact with him. Meanwhile, Alma is searching the cave looking for Ruri, but ends up running into more insects created by the dark stone. He tries to escape by diving into the water, but the monsters dive in too and keep chasing him. Outside, the maids arrive to get Wakana and the other girls out of there, taking them to a safe place. In the command center, they manage to fully map out the cave and understand that the strange shape of the place is caused by the dark stone's influence, which emits an electromagnetic field and blocks all forms of communication with Makoto. But even so, they're able to track Ruri. After defeating some insects, Makoto finds Ruri unconscious. He exits combat mode to check on her, and she wakes up asking where Alma is. Makoto explains that they both fell into the cave, but must have gotten separated. Ruri insists they find him quickly because he can't transform without her presence. At that moment, the cave entrance closes, separating Onigawara from Makoto and Ruri. On top of that, the combat system shuts down, leaving Makoto unable to use it. To make things worse, the two are right in the center of the cave, where the dark stone is located. The stone starts producing even more insects as a defense mechanism, while Alma keeps running, trying to escape the ones chasing him. He decides to face one of them and even manages to defeat it using just his fists, but he gets hurt in the process. It felt like punching solid rock. With no other option, he keeps running, sensing that he's getting closer to the dark stone. Back to Kagami, he regains access to the combat system and uses it to protect Ruri from the insect attacks. The dark stone starts compressing the cave walls, and if nothing is done, Makoto and Ruri are going to be crushed. Makoto has a powerful laser that can destroy the walls, but the space is so tight that Ruri could be seriously injured. Neither he nor the butler wants to take that risk, so they try brute force to open the path. But it doesn't work. Ruri insists that he use the laser anyway, and Makoto considers it, flashing back to when he was a child. He remembers his father's words, that their family's mission is to protect the Saibas. Ever since he was little, he was tasked with looking after Ruri, and he doesn't intend to fail at that responsibility. That's why he refuses to use the laser and covers Ruri with his body, trying to protect her as best as he can, even knowing she won't last long in those conditions. Alma finds Onigawara, who informs him that Ruri is just above, with Kagami. He communicates with them, and Ruri tries to use her power to send a gem that will let Alma transform. Makoto adjusts the laser's power to create a small opening, just enough for the gem to pass through. Meanwhile, Alma is in another part of the cave, struggling. He ends up in the exact spot where the insect eggs are, and they're hatching right then. Alma fights off the monsters and manages to grab the gem, and with that, he finally transforms, this time without losing control. From that moment, Alma uses a cloth he carries like a blade, slicing through the wall and bypassing Makoto's defense system until he reaches the dark stone's core. It's a risky move, but it ends up working, and the dark stone is completely destroyed. In the following days, they don't mention any of it to the other girls, even after everyone returns from the trip. That night, a dark stone begins causing trouble in the forest, so Kenmi goes in person to try to handle the situation. He fights this dark stone, whose powers are tied to fire. Kenmi manages to hold the creature off for a moment, but it escapes, leaving him injured with parts of his armor melted. Kenmi retreats, and a Sacred Seven member named Arakunin takes over the pursuit of the Dark Stone, which is known as Zero. Meanwhile, we see Kijima having a nightmare. He remembers the time he was an intern at Kenmi's research center, where he was kept locked up like an animal and subjected to all kinds of experiments without care. Kijima wakes up feeling like he's about to lose control, so he injects himself with the last dose of the serum he still has. At that moment, he realizes Lao is trying to recreate the serum using his blood, but the experiment isn't working well. Kijima stops her and declares that he'll create a superior serum, using Ruri herself. Next day, we see Alma at school, sitting in a classroom. Suddenly, Makoto throws a paper shuriken at him. He signals Alma to read the message, and once he sees that it's an invitation from Ruri to have lunch together, he gets a little shy but ends up standing up from his chair, which startles the teacher. The teacher says nothing, only nervously allows him to leave the room. Alma heads to the rooftop to be alone when Ruri suddenly appears, startling him. She says she also asked permission to leave, which is odd, since she's the principal and owner of the school, and can do whatever she wants. The reason is that she was worried because Alma was taking too long to show up. During their conversation, Alma becomes nervous, since Ruri always stands too close to him. He asks her to keep at least 1 meter of distance whenever they talk. Ruri keeps making several indirect remarks trying to invite him to lunch, but Alma doesn't understand any of them. Like any man, he only realizes the obvious 5 years later. So Ruri ends up going to eat alone elsewhere. At the club, Wakana and the others, except for Alma, are cleaning some stones, and Wakana's friends seem quite interested in Kagami. He tries to keep his distance, and Ruri notices this and compares it to Alma's behavior, calling Kagami out. He tries to change the subject, but Wakana's friends keep approaching Kagami. Meanwhile, Ruri talks to Wakana about Alma. Afterward, Makoto reminds Ruri about a meeting with the Foundation. On the way, Makoto vents his dissatisfaction and how he feels about being in that club, closer to Kagami's friends. He confesses that he can't stand Ruri. Hearing that, she begins to reflect on her own behavior and what's going on with Alma. She thinks she might be being a bit annoying, which is why he prefers to stay away. While Makoto is driving, a disguised girl crosses the street right in front of the car, making him think he ran her over. He stops to check on the girl, and at that moment, Kijima takes advantage of the distraction and kidnaps Ruri. Onigawara tries to warn Kagami, but Kijima cuts him off brutally. Shortly after, Makoto realizes Ruri is no longer in the car and asks the maids to locate her, sensing that something's wrong. They can't find her, so they call the police immediately. Kenmi finds out about the kidnapping and offers to help with the search. Even though he's still injured from the last fight, he wants to be available to the Iba Foundation whenever they need him. Meanwhile, Makoto finds Alma by the river and tells him what happened. The maids begin investigating and inform Makoto once they discover something. He gets in the car to go with them. Alma says he wants to help too, but Makoto asks him to stay out of it, because without Ruri, Alma wouldn't be able to transform properly, risking turning into a dark stone if he lost control. Still, Makoto says he'll call him if needed, and Alma is left with both halves of Onigawara. He takes him home, planning to fix him. He glues the pieces back together and tapes them so they don't come apart. To his surprise, Onigawara wakes up and tells Alma he sensed the presence of dark stones. He also reveals that he sensed a dark stone when Ruri was taken, and now he feels it very close by. Alma begins to feel that same energy and realizes it's Kijima. Kijima is facing Arakune, who managed to track him down. So Alma takes the road to try and find Kijima when he hears a roar coming from the forest and knows for sure he's there. At that moment, Kenmi and Makoto arrive to discuss what's going on. Makoto finds out that Kijima is behind it all and realizes he was tricked by Lao. Kijima continues to fight Arakune. During the fight, Arakune teases him and enjoys the confrontation, but Kijima is already furious and manages to land a hit on her arm. He seizes the chance and escapes, knowing Kenmi is after him. Arakune returns, accompanied by others, and Kenmi informs them that Kijima may use Ruri to create a serum. In the lab, he produces a special serum that helps dark stones maintain their sanity. Kenmi knows that Alma can transform without Ruri's help. That's why he offers his serum for Alma to use whenever needed. During the fight, Arakune installed a tracker on Kijima to be able to trace him. Cutting to another scene, we see Ruri tied to a bed, having her blood drawn. Ruri stays calm, observing everything around her to try and identify the place. Lao is responsible for collecting the blood, while a machine attempts to produce the serum. Ruri asks where she is, but Lao simply ignores her and continues working. Back with Kenmi, he's heading to the research center with Arakune to treat her. He promises to share any information if he discovers something. But for now, he'll continue helping in the lab, and Makoto also leaves. Alma tries to follow him to help, but Makoto doesn't want him to come along, since if he loses control, No one will be able to stop him. Makoto walks off, and Alma decides to go after him on the back of the scooter anyway. Makoto continues searching for Ruri with the help of the maids. Thanks to the tracker Arakune placed on Kijima, they manage to locate his position, saying he's crossing a large mountain heading toward Kamakura. At some point, the signal is lost, and the maids send the coordinates of the last place where it was detected. One of them finds out that there's an abandoned military base underneath the mountain, and after digging further, they recover the signal. Kijima is moving quickly inside the mountain, meaning he's inside the base. Makoto realizes Alma followed him and finds him, asking for Onigawara back. He needs the device to track Kijima inside the mountain, and Kijima is moving away from the secret tunnel, though the base is likely where they are. Makoto will follow the signal detected by the maids, while Alma will search that area. There's no risk of Alma turning into a dark stone if Kijima is far away. Makoto hands Alma a box containing the gems Ruri keeps. If he finds her, he should return it to her. Meanwhile, we see Ruri trying to talk to Lao, asking if she's another person who escaped from Kenmi's lab. Lao gets annoyed by the question, but then Ruri asks to go to the bathroom. At first, Lao refuses, but after a moment, she ends up untying her to let her go. Ruri takes the chance and knocks her to the floor, and at that moment, they realize they look quite alike. Ruri notices that Kijima is no longer around. If he were, Lao would have called him. She asks where the exit is, but Lao says Kijima is the only one who can leave the base and the mountain. Ruri suspects that Kijima is using Lao, but Lao says he saved her and protected her from humans who used to hurt her. She reveals that Kenmi killed her brother, and Lao is so weak she ends up fainting, leaving Ruri shocked. She can't believe Kenmi would do something like that. Lao assures her that neither she nor Kijima are lying, because if they were, they wouldn't be able to tell themselves apart from humans. Meanwhile, Kenmi receives information about Kijima's whereabouts. He orders Cyclops to prepare for capture. Makoto continues to follow the signal on the road, but Onigawara can't detect Kijima's presence, even though the signal is still moving. Makoto sees the signal has stopped at a parking lot, so he steps out of the car carefully to investigate and discovers Kijima no longer has the tracker. He left it on a truck to throw them off. Meanwhile, Alma enters a cave and loses contact with Makoto and Meiji. Inside, he finds Kijima, but he doesn't want to fight. In fact, he wants to tell the truth about what's happening and why they really escaped. Kijima takes Alma to his hideout and realizes Lao isn't doing well. Hori suggests taking the girl to a hospital, but Kijima refuses immediately, saying it wouldn't work. No hospital would accept her, because according to him, people like them aren't even recognized by society. Lao reassures him, saying she'll recover. Meanwhile, Kijima reveals that Kenmi is just using them. He also confirms it was Kenmi who took Lao's brother's life, and he's hiding something important. Hori wants to understand exactly what they're doing at that lab, so Kijima reveals they're conducting tests on those who possess the Sacred Seven power. First, they're captured and stripped of their freedom, and then they go through incredibly painful procedures in the name of science. Kenmi doesn't even see them as human beings, which is why he authorizes any kind of experiment on them. That's why Kijima decided to escape, taking Lao with him, and now, if Kenmi finds them, he'll almost certainly try to kill them. That's why Kijima wants to take them out of the picture. He intends to eliminate Kenmi once and for all and finally be free from this torment. At that moment, they're caught off guard by a Cyclops sent by Kenmi. The creature falls from the sky and causes a huge explosion, destroying part of the mountain and the hideout. Alma acts quickly and manages to place Ruri and Lao in a safe spot, even while holding a massive rock on his back. Cyclops targets the three of them for an attack, but before he can, Kenmi appears wearing his armor and saves them. Kijima jumps into action and transforms to fight the Cyclops. During the confrontation, he realizes that the enemy is also someone like him, but a Sacred Seven who was used as a test subject and ended up turning into that creature. Kenmi joins the battle and grabs Kijima by the neck, saying something that throws him off. Meanwhile, the Cyclops keeps hitting Kijima without stopping, smashing him against the ground. Lao tries to run to help him but freezes halfway there. Looking closely at the Cyclops, she realizes that it's her brother, the one everyone thought had died. Kenmi turned him into an experimental subject, making him the same creature that once injured Kenmi. Realizing that the Cyclops is hesitating to attack, Kenmi begins torturing him right then and there. Kijima takes advantage of this chance to grab Lao and escape from the scene. Kenmi tries to go after them, but is stopped by the Cyclops himself, who holds him back to prevent the chase. Meanwhile, Alma continues to hold up the massive stone, but he's already reaching his limit. Then Ruri decides to help him by releasing her true power. Kenmi sees this as an opportunity to deceive Alma, claiming that the black stone escaped from his lab, and that it needs to be destroyed because there's no humanity left inside it. Even so, Alma hesitates at Kenmi's words, but chooses to help him restrain the Cyclops. The two attack together, but Alma softens the impact, giving the Cyclops time to escape. Tired of the fight, Kenmi decides to talk to Alma and Ruri about Kijima. He states that he wants to use the powers of the Sacred Seven, but denies any involvement with the experiments. After that, Kenmi says goodbye and leaves by helicopter. Alma is left unsure of who to trust, and Ruri says it's still too early to draw any conclusions. That's why they decide to keep investigating until they understand everything. Later, we see Kenmi discussing recent events with his butler. He comments that suspicions are growing and that he'll keep searching for a way to cover up the truth. In the lab, it's revealed that they have a new Cyclops, and the plan is to run more tests, trying to prevent him from becoming defective like Cyclops Zero. Meanwhile, Alma and Ruri take everything that happened as a learning experience. They realize they need to be more careful before trusting anyone. Ruri is visibly shaken by all that's happened. Alma approaches to comfort her, and she shows joy that he was the one who came to her aid. Embarrassed, Alma quickly pulls away. At that moment, a helicopter from the Iba Foundation arrives to pick them up. The next day, Makoto shows Ruri the report with the information they managed to gather. He hands over data covering the last 10 years of Kenmi's group's activities, but all the documents are official, with nothing that directly incriminates him. Ruri requests a deeper investigation to find out what's really going on. Makoto takes responsibility to continue investigating on his own. Soon after, Ruri shows up at Alma's house, and he's surprised by the visit, and she hands him a contract to sign. Until now, she had only given him orders, without considering his own will, knowing that he never wanted to be involved in this from the beginning, so she proposes that they sign this agreement. That way, the two will decide together what steps to take next, and Alma feels that Ruri never really trusted him, so he walks off to think for a while. Onigawara, who was nearby during the conversation, advises Ruri to fix their misunderstanding, saying she should hug him. Ruri believes that won't help much, but Onigawara has another plan. He injures himself again, splitting into two. Ruri runs to Alma and tells him what happened, so he reassembles Onigawara, and after that, Onigawara comes up with a plan to bring the two together on a date. For that, he makes up a problem. In order to recover, he needs a specific stone. Alma tries to find one in the river, but Onigawara says those stones no longer work for him. Ruri offers one of her gems, but not even that would help, because the right stone must be full of sincere feelings. Otherwise, the crystal inside his heart could end up splitting in two. Alma thinks the whole thing is ridiculous, so they refuse to cooperate, and Onigawara invents another story, saying he only has 3 days left to live, or that Ruri can't go alone to Old Kamakura. With no other option, Alma ends up accepting, and the next day, he goes to the station to wait for Ruri. When they meet, the two wait for the train to arrive. Ruri avoids getting too close, afraid of how he might react, and the situation could become quite awkward. Alma tries hard to keep looking at her the entire time, trying not to get embarrassed. She remembers that in order for them to find the stone, they need to hold hands, but neither of them has the courage to do it. Meanwhile, Makoto meets with a man who brings him information about Kenmi. He warns that it's better to keep a distance from those people because things could turn out very badly. While chatting with his friend, Makoto is being watched by Kenmi's butler, who is standing right behind him, disguised among the crowd. Back with Ruri and Alma, the two finally arrive at their destination, and Ruri stops at a shop to check on something. Alma keeps walking and recognizes the streets from his childhood, but soon realizes he left Ruri behind and runs back to find her. They share another moment together, and Alma takes the chance to ask her to walk holding hands. Ruri refuses but promises she won't distance herself from him again, and after that, they go to a place where there is a monument that looks like Onigawara. They go inside and ask for a fragment from the monument, and there they try to hold the stone together, but they only manage to touch hands halfway. They quickly let go, and Ruri calls Onigawara, saying that it's over. Onigawara finds out they didn't even kiss and decides to continue with his plan to bring the two closer, so he lies, saying that the stone will react to their emotional connection. Later, the two go eat at a ramen stand. Ruri orders the same dish as Alma, and he picks the largest bowl available, just so she can try it too. During the meal, Alma asks why Ruri has been acting strange around him. Ruri takes the chance to ask why he's always so blunt, and sometimes even rude with her, and he explains that he expressed himself poorly, but that he doesn't want to be apart from her. He also says that he doesn't need any contract to show he wants to protect her, and that if he does it, it's because he truly wants to. Ruri feels more at ease hearing that, and from that moment on, she stops thinking she's a burden in his life. Her attitude changes. She finally starts eating the ramen, and after they finish, they leave and try to hold hands to see if the stone reacts, but nothing happens. They decide to walk a bit more around the area, and Alma visits a few places where he had been during his childhood. Meanwhile, Arakune shows up at a local shop in the city, but Alma and Ruri don't notice that she's there. Perhaps Arakune is watching them to find out if they're digging too deeply into the game. Alma still holds Ruri's hand, and tells her about what he's seeing, and also talks about what he's feeling. They take a break at a train station, and Alma decides to repeat something he used to do as a child, running to try to beat the train. He still can't manage it, but Ruri is delighted to see this lighter side of him. Curious, she asks more about his childhood, and he starts telling her everything. He talks about his childhood friends, whose names he doesn't even remember, but that never got in the way of their fun. Back then, he lived with his mother, but they had to move from city to city multiple times because of his powers, which he used without control. Later on, the couple finishes their date by the shore of a beach that was previously closed off. There, Ruri ends up injuring her foot, and Alma takes the opportunity to get closer to her, lifting her in his arms and treating her injury. Alma finally accepts her feelings, and from that point on, he embraces Ruri's wish and lets go of his nervousness. She showed him the real reason to fight, which is to protect the people who live in this world. And when night falls, the two return to the Iba mansion, where the living gourds ask Ruri how the outing went, and she tells them everything about the date. At that moment, Onigawara appears all patched up, revealing that he tricked them just to make the romance between them happen. Much later, Makoto tells Ruri that he couldn't discover anything, but that he will keep investigating. Meanwhile, Kenmi finds out that the Iba Foundation has started tracking his movements, and he realizes they'll soon find out everything. But he's not shaken by this, because he's already decided that when the time comes, he will wipe them all out. A few days later, we see Alma complaining about the intense training Makoto is putting him through. He has to face hand-to-hand fights with his own allies, and with each new day, things only get worse for him. On his way to school, Wakana shows up and decides to walk with him. She notices that he always looks like he's at his limit, so she asks him why he stopped visiting the river. She mentions that the river is flowing normally again, and that maybe he can find new stones there. Alma asks why she accepted him into the club, even knowing about the troubled background he carried. Wakana answers that it was because of him that new members joined, and beyond that, he ended up discovering valuable things. But what caught her attention the most was the fact that he seemed like a unique and curious stone. She even says she wished he were part of her own collection. Later, during class, Alma needs to turn in a math assignment, but he couldn't get anything done because of the intense training. Ruri, knowing this, decided to do the assignment for him as a way to thank him for protecting her. But everything ends up going wrong because they both get caught, and the whole situation becomes a joke for the entire class. Because of that, the negative rumors about Alma started to disappear, and people began to see him differently, even with that intimidating attitude he still had. He's given a new chance to take the test, and he starts studying, but struggles to memorize certain things. Makoto shows up to help him out and hands him a study guide that simplifies everything in a way that even Alma can understand. Meanwhile, at the Iba Foundation, the Allies have found the Black Stone. It was located in Yagashima, which is on the Miura Peninsula. They decided to inform Makoto while conducting an assessment of the stone's combat capabilities. In addition to that one, another black stone was also detected, located 1,500 meters from the first, heading toward Yokosuka. It's moving at a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. Alma does well on the test, and the instructor congratulates him. He even comments that he was strict with him because he thought Alma had no one to study with. Wakana shows up and invites Alma to go for a walk together, and he notices that his classmates are now treating him with kindness. No one seems to be afraid of him anymore. Confused, he asks what's going on, and Wakana explains that everyone has started to see who he really is. He becomes thoughtful, wondering if it was he who changed, or if it was the others. And he remembers the moment when Ruri came to find him, and realizes that from that point on, a lot of things changed. His routine became lighter because he stopped being just a motionless stone, and began to move for the sake of others. Ruri goes to Alma with a new mission, and she tells him about the appearance of two dark stones. Alma is taken to a helicopter to deal with the threat, and Makoto and Ruri are already in position, waiting for one of the stones to arrive so they can fight it. The entire region is evacuated, and they attack with full force, while Alma descends from the helicopter to face the other stone. It's enormous, and he stays alert. When he notices it's still, he tries to charge at it, but the stone reacts quickly, dodges, and lands a kick that sends him flying into the water. It follows after him and hits him again, while Makoto also engages with the other stone. He fires missiles, but they don't even leave a scratch. In fact, he ends up tearing off one of the arms of the remote combat system. The dark stone devours the severed arm and grows even bigger, becoming even stronger. Makoto backs off, creating space for the snipers to take action. They fire, but the bullets have no effect. Makoto lets out a shout that forces the mechanical enemies to retreat, but even then, the stone continues advancing. He tries to stop it using the remaining arm, but it simply ignores him and drags him down with it. He does this to buy time, and Ruri, in another combat system, takes the chance to launch a full-force attack. Meanwhile, Alma is still getting beaten badly. He takes several hits and is slammed to the ground repeatedly. Now, with air support, the helicopter fires missiles at the stone, but it dodges and then kicks a concrete block that hits the helicopter, bringing it down. Alma tries to stop the stone, but it speeds up even more, and Makoto appears, firing a laser beam. The stone absorbs the attack once again, becoming even more powerful. Ruri manages to finish recharging and fires, but ends up missing the target. She becomes very frustrated, and the stone charges in her direction. Ruri escapes just in time and enters the Kagami system. Meanwhile, Alma is being dragged by the other stone, but manages to knock it down for a brief moment. But it quickly gets back up, stomps on him repeatedly, and then pins him to the ground, kicking him at incredible speed. Alma believes he has no chance, so he awakens a new power. He grabs the stone and throws it into the sky, then finishes it off with one of his techniques that destroys its core, splitting the stone in half. After finishing the fight, he runs to help Makoto and the rest of the team. To do this, he activates an ability that releases a stronger stone, and with it, he charges forward, stumbling but moving extremely fast. He arrives just in time to prevent Ruri from being crushed by the black stone. With a single strike, Alma destroys the second black stone and feels relieved that he made it in time. But the remaining fragments of the stone begin to fuse together and shoot off toward the city, like a missile. Even exhausted, Alma still tries to chase after them, but realizes his super speed ability won't be enough to stop the impact. At that moment, he activates a new technique that surrounds his body in pure energy and launches himself into the sky. With that, he ends up intercepting the remains of the black stone, and they explode mid-air automatically without causing any more damage. The blue particles that fall afterward are harmless. And the next day, we see Alma visiting Wakana's club. He leaves one of his favorite stones in her collection, as a way to show that he's trying to become a better person. Wakana arrives at the club and notices the gesture, inviting Alma to go search for more stones together. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Ruri is getting ready in her room when everyone says that Aoi and her sister are up to something involving her. Ruri runs to her sister's room to understand what's going on. There, she finds Kagami and one of the maids. And back at school, Alma and the others notice that both Ruri and Kagami are absent. Wakana finds it odd and comments that maybe Ruri just caught a cold, but Kagami doesn't seem like someone who'd be taken down by a simple illness. Alma tries not to worry, and thinks the same. After all, if it had anything to do with a black stone, Ruri would definitely have said something. But out of nowhere, Ruri arrives very agitated and takes Alma to her mansion to talk about the crystal that was sealing her sister. That morning, it simply vanished. And since then, no one has been able to wake her sister, and there's been no reaction at all. The girl's brainwaves are nearly flat, as if she's in some kind of false coma. The absence of the crystal caused Aoi's petrification, and all of this was a side effect of Alma's new technique. That new power created interference that directly affected Aoi's state, completely changing her condition. Ruri thinks maybe Alma can find out if her sister is still alive, but he has no idea how to proceed. Ruri takes a deep breath and apologizes for being harsh with him. Alma understands that she wants to hear something hopeful, but he feels bad for not having been able to help so far. He then asks if she knows what really happened to her sister 5 years ago. Alma believes it's important to understand what happened back then, but also says that if she doesn't want to talk about it, he won't force her. Ruri sees no problem in talking and begins to explain everything. That 5 years earlier during Christmas, Ruri and her family were decorating the mansion with holiday ornaments, and Kagami, still a small boy, thought all of it was a waste of time, since they were about to travel to a vacation home. Kagami's father scolds him for the attitude, and Kagami apologizes, saying he's still learning. Right after that, Kenmi appears at the house as an old acquaintance of the family. Ruri, Aoi, and Kagami stay behind to finish the final details of the decorations. Meanwhile, their parents meet privately with Kenmi to inform him that the Ibots can no longer fund his research. Kenmi tries to persuade them to continue their support, claiming they're close to uncovering the true nature of the daughter's powers. Ruri's father reminds him that it all started after what happened to the girls, but makes it clear that the experiments Kenmi has been running in his lab are inhumane. He says he can't allow that kind of research to continue. Even so, Kenmi insists, but eventually leaves the conversation for another time before making his final decision. A few days go by, and New Year's Eve arrives. Ruri and her family are getting ready to go to the vacation house, and before leaving, Aoi takes a handmade ornament from Ruri to bring along, but ends up accidentally breaking it. Ruri notices what happened and takes the ornament back. Aoi tries to fix it, but Ruri doesn't let her, and the two end up fighting. After that, Ruri locks herself in her room, and Aoi tells everything to their parents. They decide to leave Ruri under Kagami's care while they go to the vacation home. Kagami goes looking for Ruri to try to talk to her and finds her crying while trying to repair the ornament. Kagami tries to help, but Ruri won't accept it. Meanwhile, Aoi and her parents arrive at the vacation house. They are welcomed by the staff and after settling in, begin decorating the place to make it feel cozy. Outside, the guards take the chance to drink a bit of wine, and the dogs start reacting in a very strange way, as if they've sensed something. A black stone appears and begins attacking both the dogs and the guards. Back at the mansion, Ruri is still feeling sad, but not because of the decorations. She feels guilty for yelling at her sister and saying that she hated her. At the same time, Aoi is also feeling remorseful for not having apologized before leaving. Their parents try to comfort her, saying it was just a small fight between sisters, and that soon Ruri will let it go and join them. Outside, Kagami's father is getting ready to dress up as Santa Claus and bring joy to everyone there. But at that moment, a black stone suddenly appears and launches an attack. Kagami's father then shows why he is the family's head butler, confronting the threat alone, using lethal equipment and advanced defense techniques. Still, he ends up being defeated, since he is only a normal human. The black stone continues advancing, invading the kitchen and setting fire to the maids who are preparing dinner. Meanwhile, Ruri manages to finish fixing her decoration and heads out with Kagami toward the vacation house, without imagining that her family is already in danger. After all, the black stone had arrived before they did. Ruri's father grabs a metal rod to try to hold his ground, already suspecting that Kenmi was the one responsible for sending that creature. He ends up being burned by the black stone, and Aoi witnesses the terrible moment of her father's death. Her mother tries to escape with her, but the black stone moves quickly and catches up, taking her mother's life. Right after that, the black stone comes after Aoi, but in a reflex, she awakens her ability, turning her body to stone as a form of defense. Kagami's father, even severely injured, finds the residence completely destroyed, thinking there were no survivors. He then decides to sacrifice himself and detonates along with the black stone, without knowing that there was still one girl alive. The explosion doesn't kill him, but throws him far away. Soon after, Kagami and Ruri arrive at the location. Ruri is deeply shaken to see her house in flames, while Kagami hears the last words of his father before he dies. He asks him to protect Ruri and escape from there, as more black stones could be sent at any moment. Back in the present, Ruri tells Alma that he doesn't know the full story about Aoi. Kenmi comments that it's possible Aoi activated her sacred powers in a desperate attempt to protect herself. Ruri never lost faith that her sister would one day return, and that's why she founded the organization with the goal of eliminating the black stones. Aoi ended up turning into a crystal precisely because of the fear she felt toward those stones. That's why Ruri is determined to eliminate any black stone that poses a threat to the world. She believes that if the roles were reversed, Aoi would think the same way. Alma manages to give Ruri strength by saying he believes Aoi will wake up soon, since she managed to break free from the crystal state exactly because they were fighting. On the way back home, Alma crosses paths with Kijima, who warns him that he shouldn't be fighting for humans. But Alma replies that he feels happy doing so, and doesn't intend to change his decision. He doesn't want fame or recognition, because before, everything he did was destroy. But now he feels like he has the chance to protect others. And that, in itself, is reason enough to keep going. Knowing that his powers now have a purpose beyond destruction makes him feel fulfilled, and Kijima thinks that's all nonsense. But even so, he invites Alma to join the mission to take down Kenmi. The next day, the news reports that the Special Investigation Division of Tokyo's Department of Justice has opened an inquiry against the Aiba Foundation for serious suspicions of tax evasion. If things continue this way, the investigation may reach the organization's president. In addition, several police vehicles surround the Zaiba mansion. Inside the foundation, everyone mobilizes to clarify the events, while Ruri realizes that someone is trying to ruin her reputation with the clear goal of making the foundation disappear. Kagami is following everything closely, monitoring both the agents and the movements in the international accounts. He deduces that all of this was set up carefully in advance, and now Ruri will have to face these unfounded accusations. Her bank accounts begin to be shut down one by one, and 2 police officers storm the mansion with an arrest warrant, alleging that she diverted foundation funds for personal use. At school, the media spreads the news that Ruri has been arrested, and everyone starts talking about it. At Alma's club, Wakana and her friends can't believe it. They know Ruri is a good person, and don't understand how she could be going through this. Alma decides to take action, even without knowing what he can do yet, but he refuses to stand by and watch it happen. Angry about the defamation against Ruri, Wakana and her friends also choose to get involved. So, together with Alma, they sneak out of school and end up finding Kagami. He seems to be hiding from the police or the reporters. Alma demands answers and pressures him. Kagami agrees to explain, but says he'll need to take Alma somewhere else first. Alma then separates from the girls and goes with him. In the middle of the city, Kagami reveals to Alma that Ruri really was arrested. And now, no one from the team is able to get close to the mansion. The maids were also taken by the authorities as a way to contain the damage. Suddenly, two vehicles appear and block Kagami's path. Armed men get out of them. Meanwhile, Ruri wakes up tied to a chair in a room, and Kenmi appears unexpectedly, saying that he's about to begin his experiments on her. At the same time, Alma and Kagami are captured by Kenmi's men. But then, out of nowhere, Onigawara appears and helps them both escape. The maids also show up and take on Kenmi's henchmen, managing to free Alma and Kagami with ease. Somehow they escape, hide their weapons from the police, and even recover the combat system. Kagami reminds everyone that they were all officially dismissed from the Foundation since their accounts were frozen. But even so, the group makes it clear they're not doing this as part of their jobs. They're doing it willingly to save Ruri herself. Lao also shows up asking for help because Kijima decided to face Kenmi on his own. Meanwhile, Kenmi gets ready to begin his experiments on Ruri. He tells her that the Aztecs were one of the most powerful civilizations of their time. They conquered other peoples just to capture prisoners and offer their hearts as sacrifices to the gods. In return, they were granted blessings and incredible abilities. Ruri doesn't really understand what Kenmi is implying with all this until he finally reveals that he's going to rip out her heart to obtain the power he's always dreamed of. He tries to open her chest, but Ruri senses danger. She activates her powers in self-defense, just like before, and ends up transforming into crystal. Meanwhile, Lao reveals to the group that Kenmi always had a plan to destroy the Iba Foundation because he wanted to be the only one in control of the Sacred Seven Powers. So everyone starts getting ready to storm Kenmi's lab and rescue Ruri. Kagami and the maids are in charge of holding off as many enemies as possible, while Alma and Lao go in to search for Ruri. Kenmi realizes that Ruri is now protected by the crystal, so he orders someone to bring in a Cyclops. His butler warns him that doing this might damage her core, but Kenmi doesn't care, saying that even if her body is disguised, the core will remain intact. Right then, the lab is attacked by Kenmi's own men, who report that Kijima has invaded the site and that a suspicious truck is approaching from the rear. Kenmi immediately understands that it's Alma, and the rest of the group begins preparing for combat. He orders Arakune to stand by and release the Cyclopes, including Zero, Lao's brother. Kijima begins wreaking massive destruction wherever he goes, while Kagami pushes through the security system. Together with Onigawara, Arakune tries to stop them, and Alma uses the moment to continue with Lao in search of Ruri. Along the way, Cyclops Zero appears and tries to block Alma's path, but Lao wants to help, and Alma stops her. Every time he gets near a black stone, his power seems to react and want to transform as well, and Alma finds among the wreckage the same gem his mother once gave him, the one he lost in the river on the day of the accident, and he wonders how it ended up there. Kijima arrives just in time and manages to hold off Zero briefly, giving Alma a chance to continue his search for Ruri. Kijima starts a fight with Zero, who's about to strike him seriously, when Lao begs him to stop. Zero attacks, but Kijima dodges and still manages to protect Lao. She pleads with him not to hurt her brother, and Kijima says there's nothing else he can do. Even so, Lao asks him to try to heal Zero using the serum she brought with her. Kijima remembers Zero, Lao's brother, and how he once tried to protect her. He approaches Zero and reminds Lao that they only have one chance to save him. Meanwhile, Kagami is having trouble. He can't keep up with Arakune, who ends up knocking him down and separating him from Onigawara. At the same time, Alma places the gem from his mother around his neck and continues his search for Ruri. He finally reaches her and sees Kenmi putting on his armor. Alma sees Ruri and tries to reach her, but is pushed back by the energy she emits. Even so, he insists and gives her the same gem that belonged to his mother, just like Ruri had once given him stones to help him avoid losing control. Right after, a flashback plays, showing that it was Ruri's mother who had given that gem to Alma's mother. In the past, when the two were children, they found themselves in a situation where Alma saved Ruri from a falling scaffold. Alma remembers everything clearly and wonders if he truly regrets having forgotten about it. Now we see that Ruri is no longer crystallized. She wakes up and blames herself for letting the memory of her mother fade away. But Alma tells her she no longer needs that memory, because now he's right there with her. The scene shifts back to Kijima, who manages to reach Zero, allowing Lao to use the serum on him. It seems the serum isn't enough, as Zero still can't return to his normal form or regain all his memories. He's still very unstable, but this time, he can only remember the scenes where he saw his sister being tortured, and that's enough to make him ignore Kijima and go after Kenmi and his subordinates. Speaking of Kenmi, he begins provoking Alma, and reveals that he was the one who planned everything so that Alma would lose control. All the attacks involving the Black Stones were orchestrated by him, even the moment when Alma was surrounded by students. Everything was done to feed the power inside him, a power that Kenmi now intends to steal, and suddenly he breaks through the wall and finds his butler there and kills him without hesitation. He then attacks Zero from behind, ripping out his heart and ending his life for good. Kijima and Lao witness everything, and Kenmi notices their presence and starts absorbing the core that was inside Zero's heart. He uses this core in his armor, in a process very similar to what Ruri did when transferring jewel powers to Alma. In a much darker way, Kenmi reaches a new kind of power, and now wants to absorb the cores of others to become a sort of supreme god. At this moment, Kenmi begins to feel the kind of power only the sacred ones know. But to him, this is just the beginning, because his real target is Alma, who stands on a much higher level among the Sacred Seven. Of course, there are other Black Stones involved in all this, so Kenmi starts a direct battle against Kijima. He manages to block the initial strike, but because of this, he turns his focus to Lao and throws her hard against the lab walls. Trying to help, Kijima asks Ruri to activate her transformation. This time, Ruri does it without needing any gem, since both she and Alma have now truly accepted the will he carries. Kenmi uses Lao as a shield, trying to manipulate Kijima into falling into his trap, and he succeeds, knocking him down shortly after. Kijima still tries to fight back, but every time he gets close, Kenmi puts Lao in front of him, using her as a barrier, forcing Kijima to hesitate and lower his guard again and again. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the lab, Aoi awakens and calls Onigawara for help to find her sister. Kenmi is about to land the final blow on Kijima, but Lao intervenes, asking him to finish her off first. Kenmi accepts her request and tries to kill her, but Alma suddenly appears, cuts off Kenmi's arm, and saves Lao. To regenerate, Kenmi drains Kijima's life energy, leaving him on the verge of death. Kijima ends up falling from a high place and reverts to his regular form. Seeing this, Lao goes into shock and loses control, turning into a black stone. During her fight with Kenmi, Lao begins to realize that her humanity is fading little by little. She is slowly turning into a creature that only seeks more power. Lao attacks Kenmi with everything she has, but instead of harming him, she only feeds his power even more, causing him to evolve once again. Kijima wakes up and tries to rejoin the fight, but he can no longer transform. Alma charges toward Kenmi, but notices that his techniques no longer work, because Kenmi can absorb everything and become even stronger. So Alma comes up with a strategy. He starts running around Kenmi at maximum speed. By doing this, he forces Kenmi to absorb all the energy being generated around them. But in the process, Kenmi becomes increasingly addicted to power. He doesn't even realize he's turning into an abomination. And when he looks at his own hand, he sees he's no longer human. That's when Alma, seizing the opening, strikes him with his fastest technique, hitting the core that was the source of Kenmi's energy. Kenmi is finally defeated, but before collapsing, he rips out his own heart, turns it into a core, and gives it to Lao. Consumed by hatred, Lao explodes in fury and wipes out everyone in the area. Kenmi dies and the core completely corrupts Lao, who seals herself inside a pyramid and destroys everything around it. Alma can't stop her alone and needs reinforcements, and that's when Aoi shows up with Ruri and the others in search of Kijima. Ui gives him a jewel that awakens Alma's true power, and then Kijima takes on his ultimate form using the strength of the Sacred Sevens. Now, with Kijima's support, Alma goes after Lao. Kijima invades the pyramid by surprise, deciding to destroy her core. Meanwhile, Alma distracts Lao, trying to reach her with words and memories. At that moment, Kijima takes advantage and appears from behind, ripping out her core. Kenmi destroys it right there, and everything returns to normal. Alma, together with his people, celebrates the victory, and the next day, Ruri manages to solve the problems by explaining everything that happened in the laboratory. The evidence against Kenmi is clear, and she recovers the assets and control of the Iba Foundation. Now, with her sister awake, the two decide to continue their plans together. Days later, Arakune visits Kenmi's grave to say goodbye. Kijima and Lao move on together, trying to live a normal life. Meanwhile, Alma and his friends enjoy a vacation aboard a ship, that famous Neymar cruise, and that's how our anime ends. And damn, this anime is really weird. Its animation is all messed up, but even so, it kind of hooks you in. So that's it. Comment down below what you guys thought if you've already watched this anime, and I'm out. God bless you, thanks. See you in the next video.